participants into the forum or the panel. To take some time, get comfortable, get settled, use the washroom, get some water, stay hydrated if you need to. We'll begin the event in about 2 minutes, just to allow folks to come in. Some of the other students are more than likely finishing up some of their seminars or some of their other commitments, so we're going to give those folks space and time to enter.
Khaliq, can I ask whether there's opportunity to circulate PowerPoints or other materials that you will collect from the speakers and how the participants can get that as well?
I think I can answer that. If you need to share your screen, you can do that. And if you can give us the PowerPoint presentation, send it to us. We'll send it to everyone else because we have their names on the mailing list.
I would suggest that you kindly police the contributors to make sure they do leave there.
Yes, I will.
As there'll definitely be a follow-up for sure.
Yeah.
Again, for the folks that are entering, we'll be starting in about a minute or so. We're just giving some of the folks an opportunity to enter and get comfortable. So yes, I hope you folks have been kind to yourselves throughout the term, especially the students. I know around this time it is assessment deadlines. Some of you folks are contending with postgraduate applications, job applications. So, you know, thank you for Can Africa Summit for offering some of these conferences as a reprieve. But I also hope that you folks are taking care of yourselves and being kind to yourselves. So yeah. All right, it is 3:02, so we can get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Khaliq Martin. I am the president of the Kent International Law Society, the co-chair of the Afro-Diasporic Legal Network here at the University of Kent, and I will be moderating today's discussion. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Kent Africa Summit for organizing this event, and of course for the speakers who have dedicated their time to share with us their expertise and their experience. Today's discussion is titled New Perspectives in Traditional Ifa Philosophy in International Relations and International Law. The discussion serves as an exercise for us to reimagine the international legal order. We can appreciate that many in the audience may be unaware of Ifa philosophy and traditions, and there may very well be those in the audience that do not have a legal educational background. This event allows folks to come as they are with the understandings that they have. However, most of us would have an initial conception of what they perceive as international law, irrespective of whether this conception is rooted in a quote-unquote modern understanding of international law, a third world approach of international law, or even earlier conceptions that have shaped international legal processes and relations. The event asks us to engage in the possible and to rethink and restructure what the current international legal order might resemble, should it be rooted in more international legal principles that reflect Ifa philosophy. With that being said, I would like to welcome our first speaker to give us insight into Ifa philosophy, Mr. Oluwatoyin Vincent Adepoju. Mr. Adepoju is a scholar and publisher at the intersection of global, verbal, and visual arts. He is also a director of philosophies and spiritualities at Comcross, a research and retreat center with a quest for ultimate meaning, presently constituted by reworking classical African systems of knowledge to be used as vehicles which search for the core of what is and how best to live through understanding cognitive mapping. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Oluwatoyin Vincent Adepoju.
Thank you very much. You can hear me, I suppose?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Very well.
Very good. So my areas of knowledge are I'm a student of Ifa, and I have a generalized understanding of international relations and international law. what I can bring to this discussion is an insight into resources from IFA, which one may draw upon in developing ideas in relation to international law and international relations. Now, what is IFA? There are different ways of defining IFA, but for the present moment, we may understand it as a system of knowledge developed by the Yoruba people of West Africa, and which is increasingly generating a global audience. This system of knowledge is best known through its divinatory dimension. Divination in this context referring to a strategy of guiding human life through access to areas of knowing that are inaccessible to conventional human knowledge. On account of the limitations of our intellect, of our emotions, of our senses, humanity over the centuries and different parts of the world has tried to seek, one, not only methods of maximizing conventional cognitive powers, such as intellect, imagination, the senses, etc., but tries to go beyond those. And in trying to go beyond this, we enter into the realm of divination. Now, what could such a system have to say to people who are not interested in divination, who are not interested in knowledge supposedly beyond the intellect? The answer to that question is the fact that IFA is constituted by a battery of disciplines which can serve different purposes, divinatory and non-divinatory. It is organized in terms of a mathematical system which encodes a literary body of knowledge which can be described in intellectual terms and which demonstrates philosophical and spiritual significance. Along those lines, therefore, people come to IFA in seeking understanding from different perspectives. And one of such approaches is trying to look into IFA literature, a vast body of poems, of narratives, to distill various perspectives about the meaning of life in reference to various issues and in terms of life's journey in general. How may this relate to this question? What has IFA got to say about international relations? The answer is not actually difficult if you know where to find. The first thing that comes to mind is a specific IFA poem known as Ayajo Asuwada, which is recited when a new settlement, a new human community is being brought into being. It is chanted as a means of presenting a template of human relations among the diversity of species that define existence on Earth. It provides a perspective on how humans may relate as individuals, how humans may relate with non-humans. And at the center of this conception is the notion that existence is best understood as unity in diversity. Unity in diversity represented in various ways. It says, for example, that when the hairs of the head come together, or when strands of hair come together, they form the hairs on the head. When fish come together, they form shoals of fish in the sea. When grass come together, they form savanna. And that without such coagulations of species, existence as we know it would not be. Therefore, this poem, Ayajo Asuwada, recited at the beginning of a settlement, is meant to remind those people in that place that existence proceeds primarily in terms of unity, the unity of the diverse coming together to constitute unified wholes. And this idea is projected in terms of human society and in terms of nature. Now, what does this have to tell us? What ideas they would deduce from this in terms of relationships between nation states, between ethnic communities, between various entities operating across borders and across cultures, which is the purview of international relations and international law? The answer is, of course, obvious. A respect for individuality, as well as a recognition of the interrelations of entities for existence to thrive. This, of course, in contrast to conceptuals in international relations, which speak in terms of might is right. The more powerful I am, the more readily I can dominate you. But this perspective says no. All entities need to correlate, need to relate in order to have existence feeding all, enabling mutuality of growth. And within this understanding of the need for mutuality, there is embedded the concept of the recognition of individuality. And that recognition is expressed in Yoruba concepts. Mo iwa, fun oniwa, which will be translated as, I grant to you your own uniqueness of being. Iwa in Yoruba may be understood as being in English. Is conventionally called character, but at a deeper level, it may be seen as being, what makes you what you are. So the expression mo iwa fun oniwa means I grant to each existence its own uniqueness, because this uniqueness is what enables it to constitute a distinctive entity with its own right to exist, its own trajectory of being. And recognizing various unique trajectories of existence, existence is thereby able to cohere in a manner in which difference contributes to creating unity. Now, we have mentioned an Ifa poem, Ayajo Asuwada, that projects a concept of the unity of entities in generating existence. We have mentioned a Yoruba concept, we've spoken of Iwa, which we've described as being. And we have invoked a proverb that indicates the need to recognize uniqueness. We ask ourselves again, how does this relate to international relations? One observes that various entities across the world and various nations demonstrate their own distinctiveness of culture. We ask ourselves, to what degree can this uniqueness of culture come together within the unity demonstrated by global space? What kind of systems of government are most fitted for each cultural system, for each historical system? Must we insist that all nations need to abide by the same formulas in terms of how they live, how they rule themselves, their styles of government? These questions remain open in terms of relations between democracy, communism, various kinds of democracy, among others. The questions remain unending in as much as there exists individual difference and cultural difference. Now, if I may ask, how much time do I have left?
This is a 2-hour talk, so you could talk for another maybe 6 minutes or so.
Fantastic.
10,
So
yeah,
let me sum up. So we have spoken of Iwa. Then, in terms of, along with recognizing the Iwa of various entities, Yoruba philosophy also holds that each element of existence demonstrates its own unique creativity, its own unique drive towards self-actualization, known as Ashe. Ashe is understood as the embodiment in each existence of the creative capacity of the cosmos, but expressed in each existence in a unique manner. And along those lines, Yoruba culture is very sensitive to each individual's uniqueness, recognizing that without the uniqueness of each being, the creativity of the whole would be endangered. In sum, I would argue that if one is going to look at Ifa in order to understand, to develop ideas about the international relations, international law, one perspective may be to understand Ifa as dramatizing a Yoruba philosophy, which emphasizes uniqueness, diversity within unity. And this vision may guide, may stimulate an understanding of the need to respect the integrity, the individuality of various actors in international space, whatever their weaknesses, their limitations, and their strengths, recognizing that each entity has something to offer in order to demonstrate, to actualize the totality represented by the movement of existence, human and non-human, towards a potential which is total, which is unknown, but which humanity moves to, which existence moves towards, as represented by the Yoruba expression. Is one of my favorite expressions, which says that immortality represents the consummation of existence. Immortality meaning our movement towards a state of being where time and space are transcended. The consummation of possibilities in a superior state, where what is sensed, what is anticipated in a material existence is brought to fulfillment in a way that we are yet to anticipate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adepoju, for the brief overview of Ifa philosophy and traditions, and to highlight so much of the aspects of unity, diversity, the sensitivity to individual uniqueness, and how all of this may very well be applicable to reconceptualizing international law. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Professor Ayoyemi Lawal-Arowolo. Ms. Ayoyemi is a professor at the School of Law and Security Studies in Babcock University. She has lived and studied across 3 continents. She obtained her bachelor's in law degree at the Lagos State University. She has pursued an LLM at Indiana University in Indianapolis and has furthered her studies through a PhD at the University in Kent, Canterbury. She has several years of teaching, research, and consulting experience with focus on intellectual property rights and knowledge systems in African countries. More recently, she has served as a research fellow at Kent Law School, and she is partner and head of legal research at L&A Legal Consultants. Please join me in welcoming Professor Ayoyemi Lawal-Arowolo.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm not a student of Ifa, and well done, Mr. Adepoju, but I have an interest, and I'm going to tell you how my interest started. While I was in the States, I was meant to do a seminar paper, and I was so excited to write on the American legal system, looking at intellectual property rights, copyright to be specific. And the professor said, no, you can't. I said, why not? He said, you can't, Yemi, you're from Africa. So it's just research. So I insisted and I wrote it, and he told me I was gonna fail. So I started thinking, why am I really writing about the American legal system? Why am I not writing about Nigeria? Why am I not digging deep into Nigeria? Because I had this mentality that creativity, inventions, and everything started from the West. Am I sure it didn't start from Africa? So I left the United States. It was part of the reasons why I left. And I came to Kent. I was at Kent for 3 years, and I'm so grateful to Kent. They allowed me to explore traditional knowledge systems in Africa. Yes, I'm always grateful to Robin McKenzie for that. She allowed me, she was always excited about the things I found out. And it was shocking because I started finding things out about Africa, things I should know that I didn't know. And so I looked at creativity, looked at copyright, trademarks, looking at non-Western knowledge systems, specifically generally Africa. And I found a whole lot of things. So I had to also look at the legal systems. And I realized we had a legal system. Okay, we had a legal system then. A lot of names were given to that type of legal system. Not really legal, not laws. They can't be laws. They're practices. They're ways of lives. They're taboos. There's so many things, but not law. The same thing with philosophy. No philosophy coming out of there. They don't know philosophy. Ifa has nothing to do with philosophy. Ifa is just religion. And from the first speaker, Ifa is more than a religion. There's so much to Ifa, and you do have philosophies there. And you talked about diversity. It's about time the international arena, the global arena became diverse. It shouldn't be just Eurocentric when it comes to perspectives or North American perspectives. You can't make it rigid. Not one cap fits all. And if you notice, there's a whole lot of problem in Africa. Because why? We need to do things the European way. And then we do our own research using Eurocentric perspectives when we have Afrocentric perspectives, and we have philosophers as well. Or we have our own philosophies. So I was a bit mischievous while I was in Kent. We had this seminar, we were meant to have a group, I won't mention the professor's name, and they said we needed to look at a whole lot of scholars. So they were talking about Foucault, Frantz Fanon. Yes, Frantz Fanon in Africa and all that. So I said Fani Kayode. I said, what, who? I said, don't you know Fani Kayode? He's from Nigeria. And so in Nigeria, it cuts across, but from Ifa, after Ifa, you've had Awolowo, you have Fani Kayode, you have musicians like Fela and Nicola Kukuti. Fela said, we'll only move forward if we dig deep into our roots to find out ways to solve our own problems. So adopting a bottom-up approach is how we represent ourselves outside our domain that people will see us. We are not Western in any way. We are Africans, and we should be proud to be Africans. So we need to dig more into this. So I looked at the arts in Africa when I was doing my PhD degree. Arts in Africa, science in Africa, looking at traditional knowledge systems. Then after a while, I realized that there's art and science in the spiritual. There's art and science in Ifa. You have philosophies, you have so many things there. They have rich poems, they have rich stories, they have rich, beautiful things, they have healing processes, they have concoctions that they make that are patentable. And over the years, also during my research, I realized that you have up to 60 patents, I'm sure it's more than that, in the US Patent Office of traditional medicines, some by foreigners, some by Nigerians, from different communities, patented without their permission or their consent. So I wanted to show a picture. Sorry, I'm not sharing my PowerPoint slide. I have a bit of a technical issue here and all that. And I was going to show you Susan Wenger. I'm going to speak about her later. Susan Wenger, she's an Austrian who became an Ifa priest in Nigeria. She was in the Osun-Osogbo Grove. Is a place, a tourist center, UNESCO, recognized by UNESCO and all that. And I was just going to say, if someone from another jurisdiction, someone not from within of the African continent, can become an Ifa priest, then there's some form of philosophy there. There's a process, there's a method. And unless you're indoctrinated, unless you're told the secrets, unless you know what it is about, like Mr. Adepoju is a scholar, I would love to do that, but right now I don't think I can. I don't even think I'm strong enough to do that because it entails a lot. I know it entails a lot. But what I'm trying to say is, if you can give to Caesar what is due to Caesar, why can't you give to Ifa what is due to Ifa? That's just how I say it. And I think diversity is a good thing. Diversity is a good thing. So more recognition should be given to non-Western philosophies or perspectives in various areas. And I think for Africans as well, it's about time we started using our own perspectives, look within the environment to determine what is good for us. And that could be used across board. It does not have to be specific to Africa, okay, in dealing with ourselves in the international terrain, or would I say the global world. So I said, one problem with Ifa philosophy, so I'm going to restrict it to philosophy. One thing that he has said is Ifa is not just a religion. It has a lot of things to do with the Yoruba people. Yes, you have people who worship and do stuff. You have Ifa priests and stuff like that. There's divination, really scientific. You find a whole lot of science in Ifa. From my own discovery, from my own research, there's really a lot there that needs to be explored. So one problem with IFA, the first slide I have here is IFA philosophy, the challenges of tradition in modernity. Okay, one thing, anonymous. Nobody knows who IFA is, nobody knows about it, nobody knows. And then the other thing is oral. A whole lot of things we did down here a long time ago, oral. So it's amazing how you can have them have in their memories so many things regarding IFA divination and the process. There's so much poetry in IFA. He was telling us some of it just now when he was talking. So many things. I think it's 256, he'll correct me later, or 250 odus in IFA. And these guys know it. When they're trying to find a solution to a problem, they do what they have to do. And later on, I also tell you, it has a lot to do with the binary system. And we all know what the binary system is. That is mathematics, that is science. Okay, so anonymity of the IFA corpus writings and the position of IFA in Yoruba oral tradition. So those things make people say, no, it can't be philosophy. It's just something they do, something they practice. And I'll tell you later on the names that I give you to it. So you have condescending remarks. And these condescending remarks to me are to intentionally attempt to eliminate intellectual production by Yoruba people prior to colonization. We were civilized, we were sophisticated, we were literate, and we're still literate. So there were so many things that we could do before colonization, but we had some terms being used during that period. And I believe it was just because the colonizers did not understand a whole lot about us and the way we do our things. So the best way was rule with our own ways. How can you rule millions of people in your own ways that they do not know? So that's why till date, IFA is still in existence. Till date, traditional knowledge practices are going on everywhere. Till date, customary law practices are going on everywhere. They didn't get rid of it. You can't get rid of it so easily because it's what the people are all about. IFA is more than a religious and mystic discourse. That is not what, that's what some people say, that IFA is nothing more than a religious and mystic discourse that is not worthy of the title philosophy. So I do not agree with that. So in different ways during the colonial era, IFA, traditional knowledge systems, traditional religions, and all that were condemned. Okay, colonizers of countries in West Africa, including Nigeria, the British, and the Republic of Benin, the French, perceived IFA and some Yoruba cultures and ways of life as magic, witchcraft, juju, voodoo, all sorts of names. Never the positive, always the negative. The perception was passed on to the colonies, and such practices were prohibited from generation to generation. So I grew up being scared of IFA. I grew up thinking it's nothing, you shouldn't have anything to do with IFA. It's a religion you must not practice. It is black, it is evil, it's not worthy of you. You understand? So many things were said about that I feel so silly that just a couple of months ago, I started a research. I'm thinking, no, how could I have for most of my years felt this is what it is when it is not what it is? Then you can imagine a whole lot of people we call elites. That's the same view. So some of them, if they're watching, some of them back home will say, oh my God, what is she doing? Why would she be talking about IFA? I have my own religion, but I feel there's more to IFA than people think there is, and we should start digging into it as much as we can. Nevertheless, the communities continue to practice, like I said earlier on, a lot of people continue to practice. Sophie Oluwole is a popular name in Nigeria. She's late now, and she did a whole lot of research work regarding Nigerian Yoruba traditions and IFA philosophy. And she said, it is a method of Yoruba thoughts or Yoruba philosophy that is not restricted to religion. She claims there are compelling evidence of ancient knowledge pertaining to modern computer science and particle physics. However, the prioritization of Western culture and English language has limited the development of knowledge system along these lines, and science is allotted to scientific developments in the Western world or countries of the North, which is true, and we do that as well. So if I'm talking to anyone, it's not just, I'm talking to us as well, to us Africans. We have a whole lot, and yet we dedicate little time to it. And we also regard it as negative. In the last session, the session before this session, I saw some videos They called tradition or cultures of the religion itself all sorts of names. Black magic, you get money, you don't get money, you get killed, or you can kill people. It's more than that. It's so much more than that. So you now have, and then I have another topic here, which is philosophy in Africa and the art and science in Ifa. So I'm trying to tell you that there's art and there's science in Africa. At the end of the day with my research, what I'm trying to look at is, if there's art and science in Ifa, so does intellectual property rights apply? Do you protect Ifa's rights? And at the end of the day, like I said, there's the spiritual part and there's the non-spiritual part. It's more than that. So you can have just anyone, when it comes to traditional knowledge, having an artwork, and then you can have artwork in the shrines, in the spiritual domain, some spiritual domains and stuff like that. So what do you do to that? At the end of the day, what I'm also trying to say is the fact that even if you cannot protect it by TRIPS or any international intellectual property system of protection, recognition must be given to it in this instrument. Otherwise, people will deal with it as they deem fit. So recognition must be given to non-Western knowledge systems in the international community or the global community and international instruments. And as of date, WIPO is trying, but I don't think they've been successful. Why? You come to the people, you get to know more about the people, you ask the people who still practice it, what they think about protection, what their needs are. You don't just get us elites all the time, or some people outside the jurisdiction or the domain to come and talk about things they've never experienced. It will be a bit difficult. And that's why I'm not so upset anymore with the American professor. I need to know more about where I am from and say more about it, even though I could have written about the American legal system. But in actual fact, it made me write. Since then, I've been writing about Africa. Anything Africa, bring it to me, I'll write about it, as long as I'll discover something. So Kwame Nkrumah, I like Kwame Nkrumah before. People have different views about him for this statement. He also queried the application of philosophies that arose based on Eurocentric perspectives or influenced by such perspectives on Africa. Because that's what you do, the European perspective. Yes, Africa should be able to work with this, and it's not working for us. It is not working for us. Now, he said, the colonized African student, whose roots in his own society are systematically starved of sustenance, is introduced to the Greek and Roman history, the cradle history of modern Europe, and is encouraged to treat his portion of the story of man together with the subsequent history of Europe as the only worthwhile portion, forgetting his own history. This history is anointed with a universalist flavoring, which titillates the palate of certain African intellectuals so agreeably that they become alienated from their own immediate story. If we're not careful, we'll forget our own story. And part of our story is Ifa philosophy. Definitely, even the religion, but this time my focus is on the philosophy. The philosophies of traditional African orientation should be taken into consideration in a manner that accommodates other philosophies, diversity, other philosophies from other regions to keep Africa at par with the global community. That's my view. Philosophies of traditional African orientation should be taken into consideration in a manner that accommodates other philosophies from other regions to keep Africa at par with the global community. So I'm going to move, I don't know how much I have. So I talked a bit about Susan Wenger here I looked at the Oshobo Grove and the fact that she's Austrian. She came to Nigeria as an artist, and she just decided to learn more about Ifa and what Ifa is all about. She actually became the Ifa priest of Osun-Osogbo. She died in 2009. After so many years, that means she could speak Yoruba fluently. She knew all the secrets. The Ifa priests are often called Babalawo in Yoruba language, and that is the father of secrets. So there's really nothing bad about them. So she knew the secrets, she knew the process, she knew the procedures, she knew it was about philosophy, she knew it was about religion, she knew it was about so many things. And that means that people from other jurisdictions can understand what is going on only if they choose to learn about it. Okay, so I'll move on from there. So I now looked at poetry. So you have poetry in Ifa, and I'm looking at poetry regarding copyright law, okay, the international copyright law. poetry is protectable as literary works. It is protectable. But in this situation, is it protectable by copyright law? The question is yes, because of its originality, but sometimes no, because of its oral nature. And you need it to be fixed when you're talking about copyright, originality and fixation. So most times it's not fixed. They kept it in their heads for so many years. It's there and it's passed from generation to generation. In such a situation, what happens? Sorry, does it automatically go into the public domain? Or will these international instruments give recognition to the fact that these things are in existence? And I know that they've been saying that you have a sui generis form kind of intellectual property, you have different things or different ways to protect, but the question is, these are poetries, so many of them by people in traditional communities, by traditional peoples, original, definitely, not in the public domain because it is not common knowledge unless you're part of the process. So they actually have a whole lot of secrets. And you know, we have trade secrets in IP as well. But because it is original, but not fixable, not fixed, or it was not fixed, doesn't mean it loses the protection that it deserves. Again, give to Ifa and the poetry in Ifa what is due to Ifa. They also processes, so patent protection. So you have processes for making medicine. You have poetry, you have incantations that they believe heal people. Again, one can be protected by copyright, another can be protected by patents. So what do we do here? Initially, they will say, some scholars were of the view that we're communal in nature. And because we're communal in nature, copyright protection mechanisms is individualistic and stuff like that. But they forget, and it was later on that some scholars started saying that a whole lot of research are done with a combination of people. You can have 20 people doing research. So what is it about being communal in nature? So that was struck off and was said, okay, fine. Some things are patentable from these traditional communities. Some things are patentable from these people. And then when it comes to Ifa, okay, and the process and the healing, and the concoctions and the way in which it resolves issues, medical issues, various issues, what happens? Patent protection or no patent protection? Again, people are saying it's sui generis system. Why don't the legal instruments in existence give recognition to it for what it is internationally? Then, so I talked about trade secrets, but I'll just flip there, flip over it, and trade secrets, looking at TRIPS, so patent TRIPS. TRIPS is an international instrument for intellectual property protection and stuff like that. And basically, it doesn't give enough recognition or no recognition at all to non-Western knowledge systems, meaning our music, songs, dance, art, stories, medicine, inventions, even though they are the traditional or local level. So this last slide, or the second to last slide before the conclusion, is Ifa in the global disregard for non-Western philosophies, because that's what I feel. Okay, diversity at that level is what it should be now. Nigeria, for instance, is a tripartite legal system, meaning we deal with legal pluralism, customary law, Islamic law, and then they received English laws. And it works to an extent because you cannot adopt only one system for the variety you have within the country. So why isn't there variety at the global level regarding various things? So here I said, uncovering of Africa's past. What is discovered is the parameter on which Africa can deal effectively globally. The reflections of African thoughts is not apparent in the global community. It is rigidly westernized, majorly of Eurocentric and North American perspectives. The irony of this situation is that there are non-Western philosophies of similar disposition beneficial to countries like Nigeria in Africa and other countries. TRIPS can play a significant role in African countries if it is framed in a manner to be beneficial to all concerned. It is a key component to explore the needs of these countries through an understanding of their philosophies. So I now conclude that Ifa cannot be separated from the spiritual in Yoruba land, even though it is apparently more than that. And Ifa priest is the intermediary or the arbitrator between those in the spiritual world and those on earth. The process of Ifa makes Ifa priest a scientist or mathematician. Solving people's problems is dependent on a binary system. This perception does not remove Ifa from the spiritual, but corroborates the view that religion is an aspect of Ifa and not Ifa itself in totality. Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Professor Arowolo, for your offerings and your insight and tying everything all together, law such as intellectual property. A lot of us as law students are currently contending with certain legal understandings such as global constitutionalism, issues of global governance, and legal pluralism. And I like that a lot of what you stated highlights and counters to and is applicable to what we're learning in our studies. So thank you so much. So an additional resonation would definitely be that more deviation should be done from Eurocentric and North American models and more exploration and longstanding principles and values that exist from the African continent. So I appreciated that, thank you. And our final speaker is Dr. Gbenga Oduntan. Dr. Gbenga is a socio-legal scholar and critical legal studies academic at the University of Kent. He is an advocate for the adherence of international law for the collective benefit and betterment of humankind. Gbenga teaches undergraduates and postgraduates in the fields of critical law and international business transitions, as well as global problems and international law. Often his discourse demands students to think of critical applications of international legal provisions and treaties in hopes for nuanced solutions for global issues. His recent major research works include a publication on international law on African boundary disputes, as well as an additional publication on sovereignty, jurisdiction in airspace and outer space law. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gbenga Oduntan.
Thank you very much. Can I start off by confirming that you can all hear me? First one, can everyone hear me? Good.
Yes.
Can you see, have I succeeded in sharing my screen as well?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for organizing this conference, the entire conference on the Kent Africa Summit. But most importantly, thank you for finding space in intellectual discourse for a topic like this. It is the very first obligation we have as future intellectual scholars and people of reputation in law, international relations, to acquire as much knowledge as we can at the stage of study and put our entire being into solving human problems. So the role of the lawyer is to regulate affairs between persons and institutions, between persons and countries. And therefore, the lawyer ought to be equipped in all possible ways with all the knowledge that he needs in life. At the right stage, he gathers that together in order to move into the future. Why do I say this? It is a short-circuiting, no, not short-circuiting, it's a short-changing of education if the only education we equip ourselves with is the Western view only. That in itself is, I mean, we are doing damage not only to ourselves, to the world, because we can't have a unipolar view of the world. That's why I'm particularly pleased with you for fashioning out this kind of, what do I call it, session. And I'm quite happy that the session has been attended by people who I have a lot of personal trust and belief in. Tony was here in the, I think it was in the late 90s or very early 2000s when he did his master's in Kent as well. Before he moved on to several other masters. Tony is a lifelong scholar. And then, of course, we have Ayoyemi Lawal, who I share the benefit of having been a classmate to twice. She did a PhD here, and we were in the same undergraduate class as well at the Lagos State University. So the topic before me today is IFA philosophy in international relations and international law. And I guess the first thing to do is to start with what is international relations, what is international law. International relations is the aspect of studies that deals with how states interact with each other, the interactions in the global interstate system, and the behavior of states. International relations is actually the father of international law, because the legal aspects of how states behave with each other, the legal aspects of how states interact with each other is just an aspect of international law. Whereas I state this without any hesitation, I can assure you that between international lawyers and international relation experts, there is no love lost, because one part believes is the father of the other, whereas the international law scholars who come later, or whose aspect is actually contained in another, still believe, as lawyers always do, that their discipline is the wider one and the more important. But we leave that little distinction to them. But what is international law? International law is the body of legal rules that govern the existence of sovereign states and their interactions with each other. Not just sovereign states, but all entities that have international legal personality. You and I, to some extent, have some international legal personality, because human rights gives us certain rights directly under international law. But then there are corporations, multinational corporations, there are states, there are people who aspire to be states but are not yet states. These are all parts of what we know as the field or the subjects of international law. So how does this all come to boil? How does this all come to concern us? Yes, it concerns us because both disciplines, both international law and international relations, are quite Eurocentric in nature. Not because that accounts for their full history. The full history of international relations, the full history of international law is necessarily democratic, belongs to everywhere, and belongs to all parts of history. From the moment the first caveman successfully negotiated trade with the next caveman that he has not met before, we already have international relations, we already have international law. But in terms of current international law, it has been captured by some interests, and that interest is the Eurocentric interest, the belief that all legal issues have to be ordered by the colonial powers. So the project of international law really started off, the project of Eurocentricity of international law and international relations really started off at the point when the European states decided to colonize the vast number, if not the vast majority of mankind. And at that point, you can't do anything in life without law. That's one of the reasons why we are having this topic. It's very important. All aspects of life are regulated by law. So if you want to go out and turn the Chinese into subjects, the Rwandans into subjects, the Peruvians into subjects, the whole of Latin America, the whole of the Middle East, if you want to turn them into subjects, you need law. That is why the European states had to capture international law and had to make international law in their own image. Unfortunately, that their own image has not been let go, and it will not be let go unless we contest this space with them. So contesting this space with them has not been as disciplined as it should be. There is this group of lawyers called the Third World Approaches to International Law, TWIL. Have you heard of TWIL before? Very few. You need to have been a very good student of international law to be a TWIL scholar, or to even know that it exists, or the path of international relations that is providing a pushback against another Eurocentric account and recording of international relations. So therefore, it becomes necessary for scholars of now and scholars of the future to expand the knowledge base that we bring to disciplines generally, not just international law, not just international, to science, to various areas of international interest. We need to expand the water we are fishing from. We need to expand our base of understanding, not only because we are resistors. Resistance is good as an end in itself, but because the problems we will meet in the future, problems in international relations, problems in international law, will necessarily have to draw on all the best we can offer as mankind. And if the best we can offer on an issue of mankind comes from IFA, we have to go for the solution from IFA. If it comes from Islamic law, we have to dig deep as human beings, just as we are doing now under the pandemic. Suddenly, it doesn't matter who is European, we are digging deep. So at any point in time, we may have to dig deep to find solutions from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from Ifa, from various other African indigenous knowledge, from anywhere. And therefore, what we are doing is quite important and should not be looked down upon at all. Because international law is there and has been solving problems forever. It doesn't belong to Europe. That's just, I mean, that's an unfortunate, as a matter of fact, I blame it on us. I blame it on scholars from the developing world. When we refuse to even understand our own indigenous law systems, how can we impact on law? Whereas we have, if you look at the slide I'm giving to you right now, it shows that in 1278 before Christ, just imagine that number of thousands of years before Christ, there was already evidence that a people known as the Hittite people and the Egyptian people signed a treaty together. It was not printed out in papers that we have today, we do it down the printer. No, it was carved on cuneiform, it was carved on stone, but it was a treaty. And the treaty regulated international obligations. So that's the history of, that's the true history of international law. And that's the law that we need to protect and we need to save from the Eurocentric focus that we seem to have been doing so far. It makes it even more necessary to do so, because if we don't do so, the real record of international law and the real record of international relations will be that which is written for us. And that will contain what I call the satanic verses of international law. Yes, in international law, we have satanic verses. We have people who wrote books, people who wrote papers that are dripping with condescension to the rest of mankind. One of the so-called fathers of international law actually grouped human beings in accordance with a certain criteria, the sphere of plenary political recognition, which is basically recognizing the right to exist, and the right to exist freely was shared between Europe, those states of Europe, which naturally, of course, what do you expect, have recognition, and then those who have partial political recognition, just because they are quite close to Europe or there have been some dealings with them. And then there is what they call the residue of mankind. Who is the residue of mankind? The residue of mankind is now supposed to contain partially civilized communities and barbarians and the rest of us. This kind of pushback that we are doing now is necessary to countermand this kind of satanic verses that exist and the belief that the developing parts of the world, no matter where they are, including some European places that are not in Western Europe, that they invented little. They invented little in social sciences, they invented little in the natural sciences. That is not true. That certainly is not correct, and we need to push back. So how do we push back? We push back by providing evidence. That's what lawyers deal in. You need to bring evidence. If you say international law should be impacted by, first of all, if you say international law used to be greater and used to have had recognition of all mankind, then show us that all mankind was worthy of that recognition. And one of the ways you can do this is to even go back into colonial literature. Here you have a slide here showing the first contact between colonialists and the people of Benin, the Kingdom of Benin. It's a long quote, but it's contained in the book Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. When Europe came to Africa, when they met the people of Benin, they met the King's Palace, which is a collection of buildings which occupy as much space as the town of Harlem. The space in the palace alone occupied as much space as the town of Harlem, enclosed with walls, numerous apartments for princes and ministers, fine galleries. They were supported by wooden pillars encased with copper, which shows interaction with manufacturing and advanced artistic production. Their victories were depicted and were carefully kept clean. The town is composed of 30 main streets. That's a big, huge town, very straight. The Romans were credited to be the first to build straight roads, but we see here that they reported that the indigenous, without contact with Europe, space they met in Benin was filled up with main streets that were very straight, 120 feet wide. These people knew what they were recording, and so on and so forth. So with the Africa that was met was not an Africa of savagery. That may sound good and may look good in Hollywood movies, but that's not what the reality is. Similarly, in international relations, if I may spend some time there, and not just occupy everything as an international lawyer. In international relations, there has been a pushback since the 1980s towards this idea that law should only look at things from a Western view, or that the current view of what we have as international relations, what we have as international law is neutral. It's certainly not neutral. We are having this idea that we have to, and the challenge is coming not only from the developing world, but even from the developed world. You've had feminism, you have the constructivist school, post-colonialism literature, all pushing back on the fact that we have to make international relations more plural. And it's also coming from specific number of states. The Asian states are challenging the view by sheer success, the sheer success in commerce, in science, in manufacturing. Africa is rising up and asking questions as well. The Middle East is asking questions and doing well in commerce. Russia and the Eastern states are fighting back. So there is some progress. What we now have to do is to incorporate all this into IFA. How does IFA help us? How can it carve a niche in our understanding of solving the problems of international relations and international law? I have to confess, I don't have the answers here. And I have to apologize that someone of my long-term research in international relations is just asking this question for the first time. It's a dereliction of duty. And I can only promise that from now on, I impose it on myself to start gathering evidence of how IFA philosophy, how African indigenous philosophy can complement understanding of international law. And I also urge my participants in this meeting to let's consider sharing our notes. Let's consider putting up together chapters, which we hopefully can submit for a publication, because there's little here. Unfortunately, there's a lot happening in different, in ethnographic studies, in sociology, in history, yes, but not in law. Not in law, and that's why I think we can feel this need. IFA is the message received from what the Europeans call God, what the rest of us know as God as well, the supreme being, and it comes down through, as usual, a messenger. What do you call the Islamic religion tradition has Muhammad. We have in the Christian religion Jesus. They have Orunmila. Orunmila is the father and messenger and evangelist of IFA. He provides the odus, The Odus are like chapters and verses in the Bible or the Quran. And the Odus solve problems. They are like, they are also relate to the body of knowledge like the Hadith. Those who are Muslims will understand what I mean by the Hadith. The observations of the disciple. It also had, if I had disciples, and they gathered this knowledge, which has been used and is still being used as in Christianity, as in Islam, to regulate affairs today and to regulate and solve human problems. The history of Ifa is not dated, but it is compatible in so many ways with scientific reality. For instance, Ifa is compatible with the out of Africa theory, the theory that mankind was created in Africa. That's now uncontestable with studies from archaeology to scientific to DNA. All human DNA relates to the African. The African DNA is not found in other DNA. So therefore, you know where the progression of DNA movement started from. IFA is compatible with that. IFA is compatible with the fact that it solves global problems. IFA is compatible with the fact that Orunmila's message applies to the world. It has actually been found recently that it is Ifa is close to what we know as a computer language, that it is recognized as my previous speaker, Ayoyemi Lawal, did say, is binary language, the binary way in which coding takes place in computer is compatible with Ifa. Not only that, there are 256 256 Odus chapters. Each of the 256 Odus are further divided into 256, and collectively, the verses of Ifa are 430,080 messages for mankind, not just for the Yoruba people. 430,000 messages for mankind. So what a dereliction of duty. Even if it is filled up with rubbish, what a dereliction of duty not to try to find out what human thinking has been in those 430,000 possible messages. It will be a dereliction of duty indeed, and I intend to contribute to removing that. How much time do I have? Can I ask the chairman? How much time do I have left? Because that will influence how I continue.
Yeah, so technically we have another hour, but I do want to have space for folks to ask questions, and I could tell there are a lot of folks that are interested in the subject matter of the discussion. So maybe another 5-7 minutes. Would that be okay?
Fantastic. If I have 5-7 minutes, then I have to jump. I have to go to what IFA actually contributes, what I think IFA has been contributing. And like I said, I don't have all the answers. And I'm quite happy to find that some scholars are already saying the kind of things I want us to be saying, which is there is the urgent need to see how IFA can be mainstreamed into debates on global issues, racism, global warming and climate change, terrorism, and other issues that trouble humanity. So within a few days of inquiry into this, let's see what I turned up, what I think IFA can do. First of all, on the issue of war and armed conflict, which is what we know in international law as humanitarian law, IFA already has quite interesting, record of how things were done in the past. And let's see how we can draw upon that to understanding humanitarian law. In fact, before the Yorubas go to war, and before anybody goes to war, actually, IFA insists that it's good to ask whether this war is necessary. And at every stage in the war, including the decision to abandon the war, to capitulate, and to seek for peace, you also ask IFA, and the answers come from those passages that I talked about. And the Orishas have to be, not just that you ask IFA, you also need to ask some Orishas. The Orishas are gods. It's a pluralistic It's not a monotheistic religion in that sense. We also have other gods. So I'll give an interesting example. When the Asians were trying to find victory from their French and other European colonizers, when they escaped to that territory and they were still under colonialism, this gentleman, permit my French, I think it's Toussaint Louverture, was trying to lead the revolution. And it was said that he went to Ifa to ask for permission before he goes on this rebellion. And Ifa said, don't go yet, or don't go, whichever one it is. But funnily enough, there's something we call forum shopping in international law, or in law generally. When a court of one country does not support you, you can go to the court of another country that you find the relief you like or the kind of support you want. So there was some forum shopping done by Toussaint Louverture. He went from the god of war, Shango, who refused that he should fight for the rebellion at that time, and he went to Elegba, another god, where he got the permission to fight the war and get the revolution. And of course, he succeeded. But there is a school of thought today that says that that's why Haiti as a country has remained extremely poor, because although they did win that war, the European world have been so particularly bent on making them not succeed till today. So that when you are talking about the definition of a poor country, Haiti is still the definition, is the place you point to. They got the war, they won the war, but they remained poor. This is just to tell you about how human beings solved problems in the past. If one God does not support you, forum shop, look for another. There might be consequences. Okay, what is Ifa's position on gender mainstreaming and you know, human liberation, women, gender liberation, and all that? Ifa, by its very nature, allows both sexes to be everything. The Babalawo seems to be popular, but that's because for some weird reason, we as human beings, we just have our way. But there are thousands, literally thousands of Iyanifas, which is another name for Babalawo, but for the female gender. Iyanifas are young, they are white, they are of different colors. They exist in Trinidad and Tobago, they exist in Haiti, they exist in Cuba, they exist in Brazil. By the way, Yoruba language and Ifa are very much part of Brazilian national life. Yoruba language has just been recently accepted as one of the official languages of Brazil. So you have the Iyanifas. Not just Iyanifas, you have Aduni Olorisha, which my good friend referred to in a talk earlier on. Aduni Olorisha is Austrian. She became the high priest for about 3-4 decades and developed the most important grooves in Oshogbo today. The artwork there, I mean, you need to, it is, okay, students of international law will know what I'm talking about. It is one of the World Heritage sites. What makes it World Heritage? This European woman got to the extent where she understood Ifa too much. She became the high priestess, and she made so much valuable carvings in Oshogbo that the place that she accepted as a shrine became a World Heritage site. That's the openness of Ifa. Anyone can come to Ifa and get solutions. Anyone can get to Ifa to create solutions. So it doesn't look down on gender. It doesn't look down on race. And therefore, it is important to take that as a lesson from it. What does Ifa tell us, or Ifa philosophy tell us about immigration and treatment of aliens and visitors? A lot of things. But in my little research, in these few days that I've thrown into it, I came up with this passage, Oyekumeji. Oyekumeji is interesting, well, the particular verse there is interesting to the extent that Orunmila, who is the Jesus figure in Ifa, was said to have been the father, metaphorical father of war, the farm, that agricultural production, the market, the house. And Orunmila went away for many years, came back and visited his children. It's all metaphorical, so I'm sure many of you will permit you have to free your mind to follow. When he came back, he visited war first, the institution of war, and said, war was happy to see his father, gave him a lot of food, gave him a lot of attention. And then when he was leaving, Orunmila said, I would like to use the toilet. For some weird reason, this nice institution of war personified said, no, you can't use toilets in this house. So that's using the toilet is now metaphorically explained as asking for a bit too much. The same way today we think asylum seekers are asking for a bit too much. Why are they staying? Why do they want to even stay here? Why are they asking for welfare benefits? So war refused Orunmila that courtesy. Orunmila now left and went to the farm, his child. The same thing happened there, welcome, but not given the opportunity. Went to the market, commerce, and they did the same thing. They refused extra until the final child, house, home. He went to the home did the same thing, gave him a lot of food, gave him a lot of welcome. And when Orunmila asked for a toilet, he said, yeah, please go into any room there, use it as a toilet. Orunmila went into the first room, used it as a toilet, left, and said, I want to go to the toilet again. He said, oh, no, just take any room. And he went to the second toilet and used the toilet. Now, when Orunmila came out, Orunmila said, please go and clear the mess I've made in 2 of your rooms. It turned out that when the house went to the room, he found riches and blessings and money and valuables. And Orunmila now said, as a result of this niceness, this courtesy that you have offered, all the profits of war, all the profits of markets, all the profits of the farm will now belong and will only find home in the house. You get what he's doing there? So all the profit that we make as human beings come home. It's when it comes home that it becomes meaningful. But it's only to the person who has granted the foreigner home. We already see this. The best cities in the world, the most advanced human settlements are the ones that are welcoming and grant foreigners more than they deserve. Grant them the luxury of going to the toilet, more or less metaphorically. When you do that, you bring in blessings. You bring in more into yourself. So that's something to learn from Ifa. How about linkage politics? The need to move with others, the need to move with other countries and to be close to them. Another verse, and generally in Yoruba philosophy, moving in a crowd is encouraged. Attracting the crowd, moving in a flock. There's a blessing of prayer that says that it is in flocks that we meet rain. Rain does not move alone. Ifa says the person will have children and will have many followers. So having followership is a necessity in international relations. You can't go it alone as a state. You have to seek others. And this is something which is generally a Yoruba philosophy. When you say Eyoni Oriero, when somebody has the head that accommodates others, which goes back to what we said about welcoming foreigners, which also talks about working together with your partner states. That is a goal and something that must be looked for in life. Fellowship, moving together as the United Nations, not exiting like Trump did on an issue of global importance. That is not having Oriero. That's not having, moving with the crowd. So there is something to be learned in Ifa that as a general rule of national building, you should aim to move in groups. Give me just 2 minutes more to just two of the issues that I also look at. Ifa hierarchy of human rights, I find that very interesting. And I'll still spend more time on this. Ifa's hierarchy of human rights and needs are divided in this way. The right to life is the first and most important right and thing that human beings should pray for. Interestingly, the one following that is the right to wealth and money. I found that very interesting. IFA is not a socialist. He's not a communist. IFA says if you don't have the right to, if you don't aspire to succeed, you don't even have a right to the other things that come below that, which is the right to a family, to have a wife or a spouse. That's why the Yoruba woman is encouraged to work. It's not encouraged to be laggardly and stay at home. No, housewife, the concept of housewife does not exist in IFA. Each one of the human being must aim to success. And after that, you have a right to a spouse, and then successful private life with children. And then the other right that matters to IFA is safety. Safety from your enemies and victory over your enemies. Each of these are goods and rights. So it's interesting. We may need to compare this to what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, and I'm sure that you will find it there, but you may not find it in this order, because you will certainly find there things like the rights to the press and the rights to, things that are important to us now, but on a very core human basis. These are the things, if you're going to have a long life, that you should be asking for. Money is important. IFA and international commercial law, IFA does not look down on, it doesn't look favorably on people who do not have the wherewithal to succeed. So money is important. Money is indispensable. The Yoruba say, and IFA philosophy says, money is something you must visit you. And it does not look very well on impatience. One of the core submissions of Yoruba philosophy is surulere, that you do things patiently. You work hard, seriously, you work hard, but you do things with some patience. And again, IFA is full of references to sovereignty and jurisdiction, and countries need to, persons and authorities need to act in that hierarchical order. For instance, and I will end on this last two maxims of IFA. For instance, Obankwe Olon Difa, the king, this is very interesting. The king has sent for you, and you are saying, oh no, I don't have time. I'm worshiping IFA, or I'm asking IFA some questions now. IFA does not encourage that. IFA says when the Oba, when the authority asks you for your presence, you have to give it, even if the religion, comes between you and IFA. Again, there are so many ways in which this can be exploited by authorities, by positivist scholars in law. The law is written and law must be obeyed. And this is it's a very interesting area, which I think in submission, I would say that existing accounts of international law and international relations are not complete until we interrogate these other tributaries to human civilizational thinking. It's an imperative. You know what? I actually think we can't stop it. If this generation does not do the job, other generations will. It's like trying to stop an ocean of knowledge. But the earlier we return to this and start applying it through the African Union, through the Latin American philosophies, through Islam, the better for all of us. The job is not for one area of the world alone. It's not for Eurocentricity alone. And the contributions of IFA worldview must be recognized and allowed to reinforce the disciplines of international law and international relations. And if we don't succeed in doing this, we will pay for it. But the world is not going to end. We will just pay for it, and then we will learn our lessons. That's what I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gbenga. Oh, someone has their mic on. Okay. Yes, thank you, Dr. Gbenga, for your contributions. Especially thank you for reasserting that there is an obligation that exists for an intellectual discourse, namely the responsibility of legal scholars to be critical in their studies and perhaps demand an exploration of indigenous knowledge systems that have been pre-existing. So thank you so much. There has been a lot of great points and a very rich content and subject matter that has been discussed by all three of our guest speakers. So I would like to open up the floor for questions, for debate, for you to pick the brains and thoughts of some of these experts. And I could start off with a question that we have in the chat. So a student has asked, are there any disadvantages to incorporating IFA with international law and international relations or politics, as religion can be exploited by those in power? Certainly, there are international legal principles that inform legal instruments, but perhaps the guest speakers can expound on this question a little bit more or expound on their talks.
So the question is, can IFA as a religion and as a philosophy end up being captured by the powerful and used against the interests of people, just as it has been done with the other mainstream religions? Is that what the question is?
I think you summarized it, yes.
I'll why don't we go about this in the order of our presentation, if we are, I mean, unless you don't have anything to say on
it. Your mic is muted. There you
go. I would think that Dr. Oduntan is in a particularly good position to address that, because in his closing lines, he referenced the Yoruba magazine and he spoke of how it could be abused. So of course, in everything, there is a positive and a negative side of how people can take advantage of it. So I would prefer that Oduntan were to speak first, and then perhaps from Oduntan and probably from Professor Arowolo, I could be inspired. Forgive me for taking your time.
Okay, thank you. Is Yemi going to say anything, or should I just go ahead?
And I really don't have much to say, because if you go ahead, you're going ahead may take another, I don't know how many minutes.
Okay.
I think like Mr. Adepoju said, do you understand? Things have the good sides and the bad sides. Do you understand? You can't just say because it will turn out the way the others have turned out, then we shouldn't explore it. There are benefits in it, there are advantages in it. Let's see what will come out of it. And I've not seen anything so good that does not have its bad side. So we shouldn't just put it by the side. And I still maintain that I don't think IFA really wants anyone to mess with the religious part. We're talking about the philosophical part, the messages, the things that can be useful to the global environment, to everybody. Just like, you go to Greek philosophies. I had to do that in school. I didn't do anything with African philosophies. How does that help a continent? How? So what we're saying is we need recognition. And some of these parts of these things are good for us across board, not just for Africans, not just for Yoruba people, but across board. So let's take the good and let's see how it turns out. It's difficult to predict. Maybe it will be like the other ones, or it might not end up being like the other ones.
Okay, if I might attempt something there. Yeah, all legal systems can be taken advantage of. Whether we're talking about national legal system, most of us are living in countries now that we are not happy with the way the government is interpreting its obligations and the laws that are supposed to relate to us. So the same thing happens in international law. and in international relations. If we allow Ifa and other indigenous systems of knowledge, Buddhism, Hinduism, to be superimposed into our decision making, yes, of course, as with everything to do with human nature, it can be abused. There are issues of interpretation that will turn up. The more attention we give to Ifa passages, the more we will discover, just as in the Bible and the Quran, that there's enough to disagree upon. But for now, I can say I'm quite pleasantly surprised that the schools of Ifa are quite aligned in their thinking, whether they are based in Nigeria or they are based in Brazil or Peru or so many of some countries that they will never visit Nigeria. Nigerians may not ever join them in worship. I haven't heard that there's a new school of Ifa that does not want to talk to one school of Ifa, or there are some people who have become schisms on one verse of Ifa. If anything, these religions are quite open to dissent and they resolve it. You will never hear that two Ifa worshippers are fighting each other and stabbing each other and visiting each other's shrines, and it's unbelievable. Ifa allows Orishas to exist and does not contest their space. The Orishas are gods, lesser gods. You will never open the newspaper and find that one set of worshippers in these indigenous systems have gone to kill or are planning to overrule, So for now, maybe in a future where government let's imagine a future where a country goes all out and says, we've adopted Ifa as a state religion and is going to inform our actions, just as some Islamic states are doing, theocracies, the Vatican City. In that kind of scenario, I am sure that human beings will do that which we are best at, which is to disagree, to be mischievous, to use political power for gain. But even with that, we still have as an end in itself to pursue knowledge that is available. 430,000 possible verses. We shouldn't sleep till we gather those back and record it, not even for ourselves, but for people who are going to be born in the year 2095, 2100, if there's such a thing. They deserve to have this from us. It's a common heritage of mankind. So just like Ayoyemi Lawal has said, we should pursue this as an end in itself, and we shouldn't think of divorce before the day of before the wedding.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for answering the question. And I like that Gbenga inserted the principle common in heritage of mankind. So we do have a question from a participant by the name of Senna. If they want, they can unmute their mic. And yeah.
Hello, thank you. I really appreciated all of your presentations. I think it was wonderful. I just wanted to make a small contribution in terms of some of the challenges that we might face if we were to apply this within the IR space, as also a practitioner of far from the Ghana side of things. I think, as the previous speakers mentioned, I think using Ifa as one of the frameworks or one of the sources of knowledge might be very useful in decolonizing our value systems. But it can't be the only framework, right? And it can't be the sole metric for decision making. But I would also add that if the Ifa system is going to be applied within the context of IR, then it might be useful to actually engage custodians of the wisdom, such as the Babalawo, who, the oral corpus of Ifa is huge and vast. And I really loved Professor your citing of Yekumeji, Yekuduoli, and all of these things. And I think the beauty of Afa is when any people or traditional people were going to war or make any big decision, they first consulted Afa, and their direction would be informed to a large extent by what Afa or Ifa prescribes, or at least they get more deep insight into the problem than if they did not consult, right? So normally they will say, if you know the answer, you don't consult. It's when you don't know the answer, you don't have all the information, that you consult Ifa for Ifa to illuminate what might happen. Ifa will not just say no. Ifa will tell you the story of why this is a no, why you should go forth to fight, or why you should compromise. And sometimes you go in with the thought that you want to do something, and Ifa humbles you and tells you no. But this kind of specificity in problem solving, whether that's going to be in IR or even individual life, can only really occur when you are practicing Ifa technology as it has been practiced for centuries, and utilizing the divination chains and the babalawos who possess the secrets and mysteries of how to manipulate Ifa. Right. So if we just look at Ifa from the 46,000 corpus, yes, we might be able to get a lot of the wisdom that is inherent within these verses, but we might not be able to get the specificity within which it has been used historically within the context of IR. But with that said, even as Ifa is very vast, we might have some problems which are perhaps not only limited to African societies, where certain times, male power is significantly more than women, right? Even within Ifa, Ifa talks about the power of women, but even within the practice, sometimes we might see that men may have more rights in certain ways, or more power at least. And if we were to put that in IR and to use Ifa solely, it might be able to perhaps in modern times be considered to be something that's anachronistic. And that's why I think Ifa is very useful and very powerful in itself, but it should not be the only metric by which IR decisions are going to be made. They should be referenced and contextualized within the problem. Would be my contribution. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much for your contribution. I'll also invite space for the guest speakers if they wanted to give any feedback, critiques, discussions on it.
Just a quick one. Like I said, I'm not a scholar like Mr. Adepoju, but that's why I used Susan Wenger, Adunyororisha, as an example. She was the high priest, a woman of foreign origin. So I don't think that last part of the men, that imbalance is clear, like he said, and that will create an issue regarding men and women. I don't know from where that idea came from, but I feel it gives both the male and the female. And Professor Duta also showed where you have the female priests and the male priests, and you're having more female priests now because they want to be more involved. So that's the only part of it that I didn't really, and we're not canvassing for just Ifa. He said it, different areas, different things, and you'll be shocked that when you go through those things that we're talking about, a whole lot of it will be beneficial to the human race. It's not just about the Yoruba people. Yes, Ghanaians are next door, we understand that, but you find out that we have a whole lot of things in common, especially those of us from West Africa, and even across East Africa, North Africa, South Africa, and then generally across board. So that's just a little bit I have a slight disagreement with.
Thank you so much for your feedback, Professor Awolo. We do have another question from a participant, Nzinga Asada. If they want, they could unmute their mic and ask the question.
Thank you. Greetings. I just want to thank you all. I mean, I'm really informed and inspired. I know virtually nothing about Ifa. I was born in Jamaica and I've lived in England since I was since 1959. And I really was interested to hear these stories because obviously we've been totally disconnected from who we are as a people. And many people in contemporary times are trying to reconnect. So that was really interesting. I believe that if the lawyers and scholars can bring out the best of these traditions and to have them incorporated into the systems, because to be honest, the world is in a state of imbalance and dysfunction. And from what I heard, IFA has a part to play in correcting those imbalances. And I think it will be a great thing to bring that forward. And I certainly am intending to look more into IFA now that I've heard so much about it today. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I definitely resonate with the comment. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I do have a question based on that comment. So our participants stated that they are Jamaican. I myself am from the Bahamas, I'm Bahamian. And an aspect of my interest or even my research has been regional agreements or regional relations around the Caribbean, the contentions that lie around that, and perhaps an increase in, or perhaps a shift in the regional arrangements that occur between the Caribbean region and the African continent. There are a lot of people that are in this moment ideating new solutions, but I just wanted your thoughts on whether or not IFA philosophy and tradition can inform, better relations between specifically the Caribbean region and in the African continent. And if so, what would that look like?
Toyin, would you like to go first? Hello, Toyin. Okay, I mean, I can go first and then I would
I'm digesting the question.
All right, yeah. I suppose
So if I could understand the question, if I could understand the question better, were you speaking of relationship between the Caribbean and Africa? Did you hear me?
Yes, so it could be, an increase in cooperation around the Caribbean region, or more broadly, the Caribbean region and the African continent. So yeah.
Okay, let me rephrase this in a way I understand, because the line was breaking. We learned from IFA, for example, about relations between the Caribbean and Africa. Hello?
Hello, yes, yes.
Yes, were you asking that what could we learn from IFA about relations between the Caribbean and Africa?
Yes, between the Caribbeans and Africa, and between the Caribbean states themselves. What kind of relationships can IFA, give new impetus for?
Okay, from my very limited understanding, I would simply like to observe that the IFA may be understood as one of the examples of the cultural matrices that unite Africans in the diaspora and Africans in the motherland. Yoruba spirituality seems to be the best traveled across the world. So, in the Caribbean, traces of this spirituality, just like you have in the Americas. So, the little I would say about that is that in finding points of commonality that can correlate these peoples, one heritage they've taken away with them, and which seems to cement them largely, is Yoruba spirituality. Others also exist, but Yoruba thought seems to have been the most fundamental glue among various peoples. That's what I would say about that.
Okay. Yeah. What you've said, Tony, is very correct. That there is already a base to work from. The Yoruba spirituality is already there. It's not nurtured by any government. It's not top down. It's bottom up. People who will never visit Nigeria, their grandparents never visited Nigeria, still retain this spirituality, retain these same verses, retain the same language, only for spiritual purposes. That's already a huge base to capitalize upon, and which we can use to bring a lot of synergizing between the Caribbean countries themselves, as between themselves, the worshippers of Ifa and other Yoruba religions in Cuba ought to be speaking to the ones in Trinidad and Tobago. They ought to be having joint meetings together, joint conferences, joint religious ceremonies. I know one of the strong points of traditional religious systems is that they do not evangelize. They don't proselytize. They are not looking for new members. You come to them, they don't come out chasing you. They don't force you. They don't even they don't leave tracks under it. So it's a strength and it could be a weakness. So I think there should be more speaking to each other in the Caribbean on those spiritual issues. Don't just do it because your parents have been doing it. Find out how it's been done in Cuba, how it's been done in the Bahamas, how it's been done in St. Martin, in all the other places, and how is it being done in Nigeria now? Since religions, as every aspect of life, is malleable, it changes, it has new meanings. In fact, new verses of Ifa are being produced, as I understand from my little research. There's Ifa, which is already talking about relationship with Christianity. Ifa talking about relationship with Islam. And to that extent, we need to meet more and share, knowledge. That's number one. I also think it's important for the diaspora of Africans, because Ifa is no longer a Yoruba thing. Let me dispel that immediately. It has Yoruba origins. It's like talking about Christianity today and its Jewish origins. It's no longer about Jews. In fact, they don't accept it, interestingly. So the same thing with Ifa. I strongly think that the most unabashed worshippers and believers in Ifa philosophy are not even in Nigeria. The people of Nigeria, unfortunately, have associated it with fetishism, whatever that means, and evil. Ifa on its own is neutral. It allows you, if you are a worshipper of that god or this other god, Ifa does not say, no, you don't do that, come to this one. No, do whatever you are doing, but when you want solutions, come to Ifa. And then it will tell you how this has been solved in the ancient past. Those basic human stories have not changed. Whether a country wants to succeed or whether a human being wants to succeed has not changed. So what are the principles that aid success? What are the features in your life that you must change to aid success? Okay, maybe what are the sacrifices you must do? And those sacrifices are, I promise you, they are not more than a rat here and a dog there and whatever. And I'm not an expert, I can't say exactly what, but very small things that you do, and then follow the principle. So we need to meet more. That's what I think I would say, Khaliq Martin. I think we need scholars, Ifa scholars and those who believe in this system of what the Kandobe. Ifa is not only standing alone, now it now has other Santeria, the people who believe in it as well. We need to meet more. There needs to be more meeting. And I strongly want to say those meetings don't need to talk about spiritualism alone. I think there should be meetings between Ifa sociologists from across the developing world. There should be meetings between Ifa lawyers or those who are studying law and how Ifa pertains to the law. I am particularly passionate about this. This is unbelievable area of what do I call it, scholarship. If there's anybody who wants to devote the next 3 years of his or her life to doing a PhD in this area, I will be the happiest human being to go along with this journey, because it's something that, like we said, is a common heritage of mankind. We need to find these stories, we need to develop it and extract from it the principles that will solve problems, not just today, but for tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say much. He always says it all. I'll just say, basically, we've said it here, he said it. You have mathematicians and computer scientists. I have a few articles by computer scientists in Nigeria saying Ifa divination and computer science are so similar. It's unbelievable. So they are both based on instructions. And Professor Oduntan was able to show us the tray, that tray, you know, you throw stuff, you tell it what you want it to do for you. And then it comes back. So it's like the coding thing, it's like a coding system. Science is for everyone. So because it originates from the Yoruba people, and because some people, I don't know, mistakenly think it's a religion, it's not just a religion. Yes, it's got the spiritual aspect and it's got the religious aspect. I don't want to put it together. You might sound, some people might say they're the same. No, you understand? And so many things. It's science. It is science. And I was telling someone, you know, I said that they're called babalawos, fathers of secrets or fathers of, and I add my own to it, babalawo nishiro, you know, they're fathers of secrets in this mathematical, you understand, mathematics, fathers of mathematics, and they do it in a way that they keep it in secrets and stuff like that. Dr.Gbenga said regarding the Ojus and all that, most are oral. Where are they? They're with them. They you understand? So if science, if IFA is science, then it's applicable to all. Then it can be used by the Caribbeans within. It can be used across. You understand? Looking at Africa, the Caribbean, whatever country, whatever space, wherever. It's science as far as I'm concerned.
And I mean, if I can come in again here, sorry, Yemi. I mean, in the world we live in, we are having this Zoom conference. Some people are in the UK, some people are abroad. We're having. What stops the Minister of Defense of Bahamas going online and asking a Babalawo in Nigeria about what decision should be taken on an issue, on the decision that he has? You can hold it online. I even understand there are apps now. There are IFA apps where you can link up with a favorite Babalawo and then throw questions, and he does it over the. I mean, that's the world we live in. If we do not exploit these things, and I'm not saying anybody should or not, we're talking about possibilities here. It's our own fault. I mean, Tony can get the qualification and do sessions with people from the entire Latin American continent, wherever they come from there. I mean, if you want to have a flavor of IFA, funnily enough, just Google IFA worshippers onto YouTube. And the first thing that will shock you is that they will not be black faces. They will be people of mixed heritage and whites, complete whites across the world. So we can have seances or whatever it's called, sessions with babalawos from across the world. Babalawos from across the world should be meeting in Zoom meetings and should be forming advisory groups for business owners, for various. If they are not doing this because they concentrate only on the religion, then that's where those of us who can concentrate on applications to life can come in. Much of what is in international law today comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition. There has been a little bit of pushback or additions, I shouldn't call it pushback, additions and modifications from Islamic law. In fact, the International Court of Justice statute says that justices of the judges on the International Court of Justice bench must come from the basic world civilizations, basic world legal civilization. To the best of my knowledge right now, the only two civilizations that are always showing up are the Christian and Islamic civilizations. But even those ones, they all went to the same universities. They come from the same campuses, Harvard, and Cambridge, Oxford. So I don't see the diversity there. And you won't get that diversity until there's some proper coordination from other sources, pushing up scholars and collaboration.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, the reason why I asked that question is because in the Bahamas, we have a custom called Junkanu, and that practice delineated or originated from Yoruba tradition. So there's definitely a commonality in
What's
the
the name
Caribbean.
again? Sorry, what's the name?
Junkanu.
Junkano.
Yeah.
J-U.
Junkano.
Junkano. Wow. And it's from the Yoruba tradition as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow.
I'm cognizant of time. We do have one more question in this space for another question, and I see a hand raised from Dalian Adolfo. Feel free to turn on your mic and ask a question.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much, Khaliq. Lovely event, everyone. Thank you. It's been good listening to your appreciations of your own, specific cultural, spiritual, religious expression, that we call Ifa. My question is mainly looking at the politicization, if you will, of these traditions, because again, the theme here is international relations. So we're talking about the legal space. What I want to know is what efforts are being done to address the persecutions that practitioners of all forms of African-derived spiritual expressions face. Yeah, because I'll give you the example. Even in Nigeria, Ifa is not recognized as part of the religious corpus, as the gentleman Oluwatoyin just mentioned. Excuse me if I didn't pronounce your name as you would like it to be. Said you find only Christianity and Islam. I know, for instance, your government even gives some subsidies for people to go on pilgrimage to Mecca. I've not heard of the government giving any money to update or maintain Oshogbo Grove. So if we're already talking about legalities, what I'm saying is, if you know of any sustained efforts at giving African spiritual systems, of which Ifa is a part, yeah, due recognition, so that we don't have, people getting burnt as witches, this exorcism happening, child abuse, yeah, because a lot of people now use so-called witchcraft as perverted means of worship. So what efforts are being done in this political realm?
That's a question that I think goes naturally to Toyin. He's at the forefront of this of the struggle in Nigeria. I mean, it goes to how much resistance do you see from the modern culture to even discussing and practicing Ifa in a country like Nigeria?
Wow.
May I just add something quickly, because I don't know, he said something about Nigeria only giving recognition to Islamic law and then Christianity. We are tripartite. I said it from the beginning. Customary laws, Ifa is part of customary law. You can't rule it out. So looking at the legal system, yes, there is a space for it. They give them the room to decide things regarding their practices and ways of life. So we have magistrate courts, we have customary courts and stuff like that. But for the other part, I'll pass it on to Mr. Adepoju. But Nigeria is tripartite and gives recognition to the three, not just the two.
Thank you.
So about the struggle, the struggle to recognize Ifa in Nigeria.
I see he's smiling.
Of Ifa in Nigeria.
Smiling.
Starting from your family.
Exactly. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Toyin?
I don't think so.
I'm not too sure if he's talking because the microphone is off.
Yes. Okay.
Are
Now.
you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking to you.
Were you asking me a question?
Yes. How are you finding resistance against studying Ifa in the developing world, in Nigeria, for instance?
Okay, you are asking me?
Yes. It's coming from a question from the audience.
The truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. The truth of the matter is, educated modern people are invariably Christians in this part of the world.
Right.
Did you get that?
Yes, I got that.
Did you hear what I said?
That fully. Thank you.
Yeah. I said in this part of the world, people who are educated and are modern are almost always Christian.
Okay.
That is the fashionable religion.
Yes.
Now, to describe yourself as a traditional spiritualist,
okay,
you open yourself to various kinds of suspicions.
Okay, look at that.
People will wonder, do you engage in human sacrifice? What really do you believe in? What's your value system? Because our traditional religions have got a lot of bad press.
Right.
You can't see their holy books to read because they are not as popular, they're not as communicated. Right. Their specialists are not as media savvy as the Christians. Yes. So I'm sorry to say that we are marginalized.
Okay.
But we are working on it.
Oh, that's excellent.
So people like myself and others are regularly active on social media. Yes, trying to communicate what we believe in.
Fantastic.
Trying to project our beliefs, our values, etc., etc. It's a journey. We're on it.
Okay, thank you. Could you kindly put some of your social handles in the chat so I could follow your work and also see what you guys get up to?
Just that's all right. In my case, you could just Google Oluwatoyin. Okay, rather you could go to any social media. I'm active on Facebook. I'm active on Twitter. I'm active on Instagram. Just Google Oluwatoyin Vincent Adepoju as my name appears. I don't know if you can see it in full.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
I am particularly active on Facebook. And on Facebook at the present moment, I'm doing something unusual. I am developing a school of modern African witchcraft. Yes, I am arguing that witchcraft superstitions have been used to demonize women and children brutally for many years. Pre-colonial Africa, and yet you cannot point to a witch. You cannot identify them by any empirical method. So what England did was they banned witchcraft, the concept of witchcraft. It was called the Anti-Witchcraft Act. That put an end to years of massacre of women for being witches. Then when the ban was repealed, Gerald Gardner started a school of witchcraft, which is now one of the world's fastest growing religions. I am arguing that we too can do the same. Instead of letting the image of witchcraft continue to float in the air as some kind of vague superstition, Yoruba spirituality has what they call the Iyamianaje concept. Very powerful ideas, but these ideas are made in contradiction, which are used to demonize women.
Right.
I am arguing that these ideas can be distilled, reformed, and developed into a spirituality and a way of life, which we can call our own form of witchcraft. So in sum, that initiative is meant to demystify, to demonize, and one of the last bastions of African thought, the concept of witchcraft, and make it a way of life, so that we can say, okay, we once believed in witchcraft used in superstitious terms. We now have a witchcraft that you can read our books, you can know our beliefs, I can practice without any fear that evil things will happen to you or you are doing any evil.
Right.
That's what I have to say for now.
Okay.
You can when my Facebook account shows my progress on these lines. I posted something about it yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
Just a little thing. I want to say also that it's so ironical. The same Christians by day are Christians and the Ifa worshippers by night. It's common in Nigeria. So don't let that, because I know a lot of us are aware, they will seek during the night. Am I going to win the political thingy? But during the day, They are elders and deacons and all that in churches. So that's all over Nigeria. So, you know, that's just how it is. It's just a faith sometimes.
It speaks to our hypocritical nature and to a degree.
Hypocritical, very hypocritical, especially, you know, my country has the largest number of churches. So very hypocritical, you know, Christians by day or Muslims by day, Ifa worshippers by night.
It's pretty much same, I think, all over Africa. We can agree on that. But Oluwatoyin, thank you very much for answering the question. All I can say is, don't you think it would be more problematic using this word witchcraft? Because that's what we fear. Won't perhaps a complementary strategy be to rather highlight the scientific aspects? Because, you know, Africans, we love everything the white man says, even though now quantum scientific research is actually proving many of the African spiritual principles that we have. I can give you many examples now.
Hey, Daliu. I think that is a phenomenal question, and I think that there's definitely space and discourse to take that on. I am slightly cognizant of time, and I do want to be respectful of the capacities and time commitments that the guest speakers as well as the audience has. So what we may do is share the question, or perhaps offer as a concession folks to share their social media, primarily the guest speakers, and email that to you all, and thus you could follow up with your question directly with Mr. Adepoju. Is that okay? Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. Sorry for taking.
If I may, I can just respond in one line to that statement, to that question.
Okay.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, I am involved in the scientific, the spiritual, and the literary study of these concepts. And I'm involved in a debate on these questions right now, which I will post on my social media handle shortly. The scientific, the spiritual in tandem. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for the audience for the very engaging questions. And I look forward to this discourse, and I'll take my own time in researching more into Ifa philosophy traditions. So thank you so much. So as we conclude the forum for this evening, I would like to thank the audience for their attention, their participation, their questions in today's events. I thank Can Africa Summit once again for organizing this very insightful forum. And I thank our guest speakers today for sharing their expertise and experience. I would also like to remind the audience that tomorrow the Can Africa Summit will conclude the week with a discussion on decolonization in academia. And I encourage you all to attend. So with that being said, thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, that was fantastic.
Thanks very much indeed.
Bye.
Lovely, educational. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. I'm going through the things they've written in the chats. Toyin and Yemi, we have to talk. Publications must come out of this. All right, bye.
Hello, sir.
Yes, definitely.
Hello, sir.
Hello, yes, please.
Please, it will help if we can get the Zoom link early enough because it come with the invitation. Okay. So we normally receive it as email, and because we're on the move or we're busy with other things, we tend to miss joining.
Okay.
So it did not come. It did not come with the Eventbrite registration, so it wasn't there. So we normally get it later as email, maybe some minutes before the event starts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Beautiful.